Let's move on to our next presentation. This is from Alison Gilby. Alison is the General Manager of Human Resources at Viterra. Alison started there in 2007, and in 2010 she moved from the talent management team to Human Resources, working as a business partner across all business functions, responsible for performance management processes and support, succession planning, remuneration planning and organisational development. A lot of planning. In 2022, Alison was appointed General Manager of HR. She's responsible for managing all aspects of human capital across operational and corporate environments around Australia. Her role also oversees training across the business, encompassing operational, safety and development training. Alison, welcome to the stage.
And I've solved the accommodation crisis. No, I haven't. Not at all. Is there a clicker for... Under here, sorry, thank you. I'm very technologically savvy, thank you. I wish I could say that we'd solved the world's problems, but of course we can't. So how do we solve an attraction and retention problem in rural SA? We access everyone in this room. So that's can't take too much credit for doing this. What I didn't want to do today was brag about Viterra and what we do. We're a pretty big footprint, regional South Australia, but I kind of need to because we do have a fairly big impact on regional SA and the whole of SA. So what we do is we cover the whole supply chain from farm gate through to delivering products to consumers in Australia and overseas. I like this screen here that's nice and big, that's great. We originate, store, handle, transport and market a range of agricultural commodities including grains, oilseeds, pulses, and we double in cotton in New South Wales. As one of the largest buyers of Australian commodities nationally, we purchase directly from growers and supply national and international consumers through our marketing and logistics network. Someone today asked me, do we dabble in ports? Yeah, we've got 6 or 7 in South Australia. Our storage and handling network includes upcountry sites and strategically located port terminals spanning key growing regions in South Australia, Western Victoria, and in the last couple of years we've had some very healthy competition, which has been good. So our contribution to the state, I think this is important to talk about in the context of what we're talking about, and I did get permission to talk about these figures. We spent $1.244 billion in South Australia in the last financial year. $1.004 billion was this purchasing grain from our South Australian growers. We spent $240 million on maintaining and operating our grain supply chain in the state. We employ, just in South Australia, 700 permanent, part-time and full-time, but permanent staff in regional and urban South Australia. We've got about 140 in head office, the rest are permanent staff regional. We employ around 1,500 casual staff across regional SA annually over the harvest period, and this year is going to be a good one. This year, which I think is really important, so the last financial year, we spent about $80 million just on wages. It's obviously a very big chunk of what we spend. And I like to tell the people in my company that you make the money, I'll spend it for you. And I do a good job. Our exports, I think this is really important as well. We weren't impacted by COVID. We were really, really fortunate. Essential service, food, global, and international events like wars and other interesting things that are happening. But our exports are spread across the whole world. We've got 72, I think, global customers. So in a pandemic, in a war, or whatever, we keep going. We're here for the long haul, which is pretty exciting. So I've been managing the harvest recruitment process for 10 years. I take very little credit for what we do. I've got a very, very good team. But we employ annually between 1,300 and 1,500 casuals, up to about 1,800 actually, I think 2016, every year. So it's a massive process and it's a big contribution to the state. Pre-COVID, hate to talk about that little divider, but pre-COVID we did have, we had more than sufficient applications for our harvest process. We'd get about 4,500 applicants annually. This year, currently, we're only a couple of weeks away from being really serious about harvest is starting soon. We've had about 2,500 applications. So we've still got enough, but it's a big difference in what's available. So pre-COVID, again, that little statement, we did have issues still in some areas. Lock on the Eyre Peninsula, Pinaroo in the Mallee not sexy places for people to go and work. And we had to provide accommodation for some harvest areas, even pre-COVID. Annually, we had probably about 40% of our intake every year was people from overseas and grey nomads. That's obviously shrunk. So we've been advocates for a few years about having to do something, as everybody has in this room, having to do something to raise awareness about the need for assistance in rural areas. And it's not just about accommodation. It's, having someone who's a supervisor, their spouse is coming with them and they want a job. They want employment facilities. They want all of the other things that we all know about. So it's been on our agenda for a little while. Fast forward to 2022, we are absolutely dependent on providing accommodation for harvest casuals, or a percentage of our harvest casuals. It's not an option. And we've also got an increased demand from permanent and fixed term roles, so stuff we've never considered before. You want to be a supervisor at Lock? Sure, we'll provide a heap of benefits for you, because that's the only way we're going to get people to come. So it's spread over harvest. But I'll talk about, I'd like to say it's a fantastic case study with an ending. It's a beginning, and we've got the same issues as everybody. What is interesting though, before I just go into what we're currently doing, besides what we've done for the last few years, is in the last financial year, in addition to that little money we spent on labour, we also spent $1.8 million on just accommodation in 1 year. So lucky it's a global company, we've got some money, but you can't do that forever. So it's big spend. So accommodation project, why? We've now got a group in from across the state is actually looking at a long-term accommodation project. So not just that, jeepers, we've got a big harvest coming up and it is looking really exciting. I'm very nervous about getting enough people. But besides just getting through this year, and I'm not really sure what we're spending so far, we've got a plan ahead, and we've heard that today again and again. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here in 30 years' time. We've got a plan ahead. So that's what this group is about. One of the things I wrote, and I was laughing when you talked earlier about not having your glasses. I'm sure you can read that from the back of the room. I printed that really big just in case my glasses break, because I can't read without it. I had one time when that happened and I couldn't read a thing. So where was I? Here we are. So we are reacting to this harvest. What I wrote down to say is it's expensive and it's not efficient, but it's not an option. So we are trying to move forward, trying to plan. So I'll just go through really, really briefly. We've done a lot of stuff in the past, which I'll be able to cover when I look at what we're doing in the future. So we had to do a roadmap. That took us 6 months to really nut out exactly what are we doing. So where are we now? So what are we looking at? What are our future needs? That's the million-dollar question. What are the costs involved now? What are we looking at spending in the future? What are the risks of making investments or doing whatever we want to do? Community, we have to think about, we work in a lot of communities. We had kicked back a few years ago from having people come in from overseas, not through a migration process, but just having overseas workers in some rural towns. What about our people, even though they hadn't applied for the job? So there's a lot of community stuff we need to consider, because we're part of a lot of communities. And what alternatives are there? So one of the things we looked at, so we're still working through this, by the way, I don't have any answers, but those are the things we have to consider. So what are we looking at? We're looking at different types of accommodation specifically for our harvest period for seasonal workers. So what sort of experience do we want people to have? What are the standards? Do we go for gold, silver, bronze, whatever? Do we want to have en-suites? Do we want to have shared rooms? All of that sort of thing. Should there be cooking facilities? We're still determining what sort of standard we need to provide. Cost, do we get people to share the cost? Do we provide it? Like I said, last year, just on accommodation, we spent $1.8 million. It's a lot of money. And availability. So when we're talking about availability, we use quite a few different options at the moment. So we've got some hotels in more remote areas that we book out for 3 months. We've got caravan parks where we pay a subsidy so that the grey nomads coming through can pay less if they're working for us. We rent some houses. We own a couple of houses, which are from 40 years ago. No one knows why we've got them, but we do. We use them, and etc. We used, and I've left the Humani Hut picture there for a reason. They really saved us last year. Awesome local company, brilliant service, brilliant idea. It had its challenges. So we had to go through a process of getting council approval to figure out where to put these humani huts, because jeepers, we needed them for last year, and getting permission to put them on our sites. We didn't have fences. I made sure that I spent a lot of time talking to supervisors about make sure the front end loader keys are out of the front end loader when you go tonight, because that's what I lost sleep about. All sorts of things. We had to figure out barbecue areas. We had to figure out toilets and showers, everything. So interesting, and that's why I've put their picture there, because they really saved us last year. When we've got harvest, happens every year. Fantastic. Some years are better than others. We've also got year-long use. So if we look at the who bit as well, we've got our harvest casuals. We have a lot of contractors that travel around our state doing all sorts of different things in our sites. So we have contractors staying in hotels, adding to their cost, etc. Internal, my team, safety, food quality, what else we got? Logistics people, etc. They travel around the state. I was in Sojourner yesterday, and next week I think I'm going to be Pinaroo for a little while. We travel, we use accommodation. So that's another group that we can look at this, to have this for. We've actually got an accommodation team now. So we've got a group of people in head office that are called the accommodation team. So procurement, finance, human resources, etc. Because it's a big deal and it's becoming a big part of our business. Finance and property, safety and HR. I'll go back to, the when. Reduce the reactive purchases. So last year we threw a lot of money at, we don't know what we're going to do. So reduce that, spend it on long term, make it effective. Our next steps for this group are planning for next year, not for this year. So we'll get through this year. We've made a lot of phone calls. We've paid for stuff we might not use, but that's what we have to do. Availability. The more we have competition, the more other things are coming up in some more regional areas that we can't guarantee that we've got the hotel that we've booked for the last 20 years, that we're going to be able to do that forever. Capital expenditure, operational expenditure, figure out budgets. What do we need? We don't really know, but we're trying to figure it out and we're trying to plan for it. And our footprint, our strategic sites might change in the next 10 years. Everyone knows we've shut some sites over the last few years. We might have other sites that become bigger. We might have rail again somewhere. Things are going to change. So what's our footprint going to look like in 10 years' time? We've got to try and plan for that. Easy. So we have looked at, I said, a lot of little things over time, and I wish I could stand here and say we've got a great solution. Our solution at the moment is to be serious about the future and to really make some proper planning rather than reactive every year to harvest. I tear my hair out about this time of year. You haven't told me where you need the accommodation. So we'll get away from that. So our options. So we've got the bottom one, do nothing. That's an option. Is it effective? I'll get back to you in 5 years. Or do we look at what we can do? So planning and managing, we've looked at paying an allowance for every harvest casual in certain areas. How do you then do something for someone who's a local who's working for us? Do they get the allowance? All of that sort of thing comes into that. We've engaged local sports clubs and caravan parks, etc. We've had some houses that we're not really sure why we had them, but we've got them. We've done them up so they're livable. We've looked at leasing and purchasing huts and dongas, and humani huts is included in there. We've looked at renting or purchasing residential stuff that's already there, utilising local vendors like the Lock Hotel and other long-term contracts. So there's a lot of stuff to look at. Like I touched on, risks that we're still working through. What is our future footprint? You know, that's the million-dollar question. We've got to figure out where we're heading so we can accommodate it. Pardon the pun. Safety of the community, our people, our employees, the accommodation that we're putting forward, etc. Vendor relationships, we had a situation last year where we cancelled some accommodation, paid the deposit that we said we would, didn't end pretty. We work in that community. We'll probably use that person again this year. We've got to think about that. Property sales, do we want to get into that? Competition, do we need to make sure? I'll keep mentioning Lock because that's obvious if anyone knows about the grain industry, that we've got good competition there. Do we want to make sure that we've got the accommodation and the other people don't? What's available? And community impact. We had a couple of situations last year where we had to deal with some naughty harvest casuals, and that's damaging to our reputation. So I'll just go quickly over that. I think the one thing for me for safety was the take the front end loader keys out of the front end loader. Don't anyone try. Anyway, community impact. We don't underestimate the impact of those communities that we live and work in. Economy boost, that's obvious. It's good news stories. We try and promote that where we can because there are a lot. Long-term agreements, is that going to work in 5 years' time with that company? What if they don't like us anymore because we've done something with the grain and my uncle delivers, etc. Rental markets, that's obvious. It's pretty hard. Seasonal variations. This year's going to be really good. Next year, let's have a look. I'm not sure. Cancellations happens. Our brand, that's important because we were around for a while, so we've got to think about that. Local relationships, council relationships. One good thing that's come from the last 6 or 12 months is, particularly in Eyre Peninsula, we're working with councils to look at some joint stuff. So you provide the land, we might be able to provide the buildings. There might be some other industries that use it when we're not using it when it's out of harvest. So some stuff in the area is starting to happen, which is exciting, and it's in the spirit of what we're talking about today. Reputations of the people providing the accommodation, the people working, the locals who work there, and our company. And behavioural impact. I said there's if someone does something to offend someone in a small country town, that stays for a long time. Outcomes, I wish I could say more than we have a long-term project. We have a committee. It is here for the long haul, and it's something that we're all addressing, and today is pretty exciting to see the crossing. I've got a few business cards that I know I'll be following up that we can work together. Right here, look at that. Working with local councils to establish permanent accommodation. That's something we've been trying to do for quite a long time. We've got some traction. It's a benefit to growers, local community and workers being drawn into local regional areas, and what we do can impact pretty much everyone in the room and vice versa. Short-term accommodation for harvest period, we've got to keep looking at that and looking at available accommodation in certain locations to utilise what is there. It's interesting, we don't do this on its own. We're stepping into traineeships next year. We're boosting apprenticeships. We've got what I like to call bespoke leadership courses. So instead of having something that we think everyone needs, we've actually trialled this year with our supervisors. What do you need? We'll make sure that you get that. We'll make you stay with your families and have a career with us. That's about all I want to say. Stay tuned as we move forward, and I'm pretty sure that we'll all be crossing paths somewhere. We're on the same direction, and thank you for having me. Thank you.
Give you the lectern back, because we did get a couple of questions come in for that. Thank you so much, Alison. I had a couple of my own. You mentioned that you do provide some benefits to workers, for managers. What are they? Is that in it to help attract or to help retain? A bit of both?
It's a bit of both,
yeah.
and it's really, we've stepped into it this year. It's something, that's a minefield, because what we've found in this area is we have a lot of attention across a lot of regions. So we have to be really conscious of having a set salary range for supervisors, all of that sort of stuff, and there's lots of reasons, good reasons for that. What we've done this year, one thing that's been successful so far is we've actually got into FIFO for maintenance. We could not get people into Thevenard, so we went, let's try it. Costs a bit more, but we've got people in who do 7 days on, 7 days off at Thevenard, for example, provide accommodation. What we're doing for some of the more remote areas for supervisor roles is for internal people as well. If you are successful in getting this role, we guarantee you a role in 4 years' time somewhere else closer to Adelaide and not quite so remote to where you are. We've also implemented remote allowances. So if you're somewhere where there isn't a train or a bus and it's really expensive and we can't get people, we'll give someone an allowance to say, come and live here. We'll give you an allowance while you're here. It's not brushstroke, but it's for pockets. We're doing those sorts of things. Yeah.
So it's more of an individual thing. Yeah. Okay. A question from John, big one. How will Viterra handle this year's record harvest?
Easy. Piece of cake. The harvest casuals are going to be in place on time, trust me. Yeah, interestingly, we've got, at the first time for a long time, we've got all of our supervisors in town today and tomorrow doing a big sesh. and I'll be talking to them tomorrow about what's your plan B and your plan C. And that's what we're doing basically. So a lot more thinking and planning than ever before about if this doesn't happen, we've still got to make sure we do this safely. Yeah.
Okay, another question here, anonymous. Do your seasonal workers follow the harvest when finished, or do you help them find other opportunities in the local community?
We really struggle with that, as in it's not a thing to go from grain to fishing industry to riverland, etc. We've tried before for lots of different reasons. Things haven't worked. We should be able to do it better. I don't think our seasons align nicely, which makes it hard. We've even talked about global for our company to do we have people in Canada who want to come and do the grain here that are already experienced and to bring them over. So the short answer is it would be nice to have something that works. We have tried. It's not straightforward. Any
bites on the global idea?
We've just been talking about it recently as that's a good idea. We've got grain workers who are experienced. Particularly, that's what we find the hardest thing is having someone who's done, and if anyone's got any rural connections, grain classification. If you've got someone who's done grain classification for a couple of years, life is better for everybody. If you've got someone who knows how to operate the stackers, who get the grain from the truck to the bunker, makes your life easy. We don't have to train them and they can step in. So if we've got experienced people from anywhere who know how to do that sort of stuff, it's going to be a lot easier.
Okay. A couple more, if you don't mind. What are the difference in wastage in silos or on ground bunkers? Another one from John.
If your front-end loader drivers are really good, which I'll make sure they are, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know we have a whole department that deals with that.
Yeah. With accommodation at a premium, is there a concerted push to recruit local youth in regional areas? That's from Les.
That's it is a good question, and I found it really interesting a few years ago when we were confronted with issues about having overseas people work for us. We advertise everywhere, so we don't not advertise locally. We're looking at schools programs, we're looking at traineeships regionally to get people more interested. We're also working something really simple we did this year, which surprisingly was effective. School kids and uni students who work for us during harvest, we've gone to them in school holidays and said, come and work for us, so you've got a bit of money and you're keeping your skills going. So I can't believe we didn't think of that before, but we've done that for the first time this year.
What's the minimum age?
16. I know about the Education Act, I might have got in trouble.
No, I was surprised to recently find out we don't really have legislation in South Australia for a minimum age, as long as it's parental permission. You correct me if I'm wrong.
The Education Act, you have to have permission if you're under 17 to work during school hours in school time. So, yeah, we have a whole process with that. But we have a lot of school kids regionally who will do afternoon shift. So they'll finish school at 3 and start work at 5:15 and do 3 or 4 hours.
And I'm assuming it's seasonal, but is it the type of work that can be done weekend? You know, like if you're in a city, you go to a retail store and there's Thursday or Friday night trading and weekends.
Harvest is harvest.
Yeah.
So that's the hard thing too with uni students and school students, because if you finish school in the end of November, harvest might be finished at lock, for example. So, and even during school holidays, getting people back, if there's no grain coming through to classify, how do you keep your skills up? So harvest is harvest. No holidays in harvest.
And so the schools and the parents where you've been trialling this were on board. So are they missing school days, or is it just after school?
There's a really small percentage of school-age students who the school will say they're better off to be working and getting some skills, which is great. But that's a low percentage. Mostly it's after school hours or weekends. They'll roster them on the weekends during school time. Yeah,
it's a great idea. Have you looked at tapping into senior school students? I guess these are the younger ones we're talking about that need parental permission. What about the older ones?
Same. If you're 17 or under and you're enrolled at school, you can't work during the day unless you have permission from the school.
One more here, which is anonymous, and you might not want to answer it, but I'll ask anyway because that's my job. Can you give us some ideas of what Viterra workers would earn per month?
I can tell you because it's publicly available. I think we've got 8 or 9 enterprise agreements. So Country General Hands Agreement, which is the majority of the country sites, it's $28 something an hour casual. So if you come for a harvest job, that's what you get, and then overtime rates. Yeah.
And then is accommodation or any other perks factored in? Is that
That's the flat rate. Accommodation, depending on what region it is. I keep talking about Lock. If you go to work at Lock, you'll get accommodation. And yeah, so it depends. It's very localised for the extra bits. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you.